Three, two, one.
Okay, let's go. I'm Lawrence.
I'm Uzair.
We're two university students trying to plan our futures and create successful and productive lives.
Today we are having a discussion about the low information diet. Welcome everyone, this is Thinking Ahead.
Right, so let's kick this off. What is a low information diet to you, Uzair?
So the low information diet is essentially a term that I came across originally in the Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week. And I feel like the principle behind it is that decreased input leads to increased output. In today's world, when we have like a lot of information overload, every information is available all the time.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to be selective about the type of information we take in, and that way we'll be able to be more productive. It's essentially having selective ignorance. And in my head, if it's not related to your goals and ambitions in some way or another, you don't need to know it. It's like kind of living in a bubble of your own ambitions. Anything outside of that bubble, any information outside of it doesn't really matter.
Right, so you're like trying to focus all your efforts on what you want to do and leave everything else at the door.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying.
What is it? What's it for you?
I mean, for me, it's a similar thing. It's basically just removing some of the useless information in your life. So you just have less noise, you know? So instead of having all of these distractions and stuff, you just have a clearer mind, and it helps you think better, helps you act better, and essentially it helps you live like a better life, right? And examples of things you can cut out news or social media, articles, anything that you kind of think maybe you're looking at on a daily basis, but is not really contributing to your life at all in the long run. So how would you apply that to your life, though?
I think in my head, I've come across I made this set of rules. So I use it in terms of social media and the news and stuff extensively at this point, and I feel like it's really helped me out. But I also use it in terms of just the smallest of things. If I'm learning something, for example, even a book that I feel it's probably interesting, but it's not contributing to my goals and ambitions in some way, I just not learn it, So I take it one step further from what you do. For example, in my head, I'm only allowed to check WhatsApp and Instagram messages every 2 hours. Right? Because I feel like everyone feels like you'll miss out if you don't reply to the message as quickly as possible. But the more you actually practice this thing, of low information diet, and you don't reply to messages, just set that rule, you'll realize that you actually don't miss out on that much,
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone feels like if you don't reply to this message or you don't see that story on Instagram, you're gonna lose out on something. But in reality, you're not really going to lose out on anything. The same goes with news. A lot of people get really shocked when I say that I just stopped reading the news completely, right? So I only get my news from Instagram, and so I follow a few Instagram pages that give bullet headlines, yeah? And I only follow them. I don't read elaborate articles. I don't read the newspaper. I don't do any of that anymore, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people get really panicked. They're like, oh my god, how are you going to survive in this society if you don't know news, But I think the more you start practicing this, the more you realize that you can survive perfectly fine, you can function perfectly fine in this society, by doing this, In fact, I think I'm functioning better in this society because I'm not getting all that information,
Yeah.
Because most people take all that information in, but you're never going to use it, So I might as well take a small bit of information and actually use that properly in my life, if that makes sense.
I get that, yeah. I mean, I know that, for instance, especially with social media, like Instagram, it's so easy, isn't it? To just, you say you're going to, go to check your messages or something, and then all of a sudden you just lure in, they build their algorithm to keep you on there. So you just find yourself a lot more distracted as well, I think.
Yeah.
And again with the news, I think that's something that I have trouble with, is not reading the news, because I feel like I'm missing out. And I feel with anything that you feel like you're missing out. But I think, like you said, if you saw the news once or twice a year, you're probably going to learn just as much as if you saw it every single day.
Exactly.
Very little difference.
And like if it's something that's actually worth your time, like 90% of the news isn't, you know, like there's like some things that are really important, but I feel like if you I get that information, like people are you're gonna know about it even if you don't read the news, if it's that important, right? So if something happens, I usually find out about it on social media, right? If it's something big enough, or like I'll talk to it with my friends and they'll tell me more about it, right?
Yeah.
But I don't have to actively seek that information. I'm learning about it from my surroundings.
Yeah.
So I don't think, and I think, yeah, I still think people have that mental block of like, I'm missing out, even though like you're actually not. I think one good practice you should do like is going on like an information like fast for a week. So in that 1 week, you're not gonna read any news, none at all.
Yeah.
You're not gonna reply to any messages, okay? And you're not gonna do like see anyone, like delete all your social media essentially, right? And I feel like it sounds very drastic. By the end of the week, you realize that nothing actually changed that much, you know? You might have missed a few messages from a few friends, yeah? Okay. But if it's something that important that they actually want you to be there, they'll call you, you know? Or they'll come to you personally.
Yeah.
So you can talk to your friends and stuff and they'll tell you if anything big happens, like, you know? So you actually realize that you don't need to read the news, and that'll improve your confidence, and then you can start applying it daily in your life.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good first exercise to try.
So it's kind of like you're taking it all the way to the extreme, so that you're
throwing yourself in the deep end
exactly.
to kind of know that if the deep end isn't that bad, right? Then the shallow is definitely not going to be as bad, right? Yeah. So like in specific instances, how do you apply it in your life? Like, are there some things you do, like not read messages? I know you don't reply to messages that often.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So with me, I think, so in terms of social media, I tend to stay off as many of the big ones as I can. So I don't use Facebook really at all, or Snapchat. I try and stay off Instagram as much as I can, because I know it's quite easy for me to get lured back in.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, so I try and keep everyone on WhatsApp. And I think the thing with starting is that if people are messaging you on all of these different platforms, but you just want them to message you on WhatsApp, people think it's quite hard to kind of move them away. But I think if you just don't reply and you just say, message me on WhatsApp, they're going to just message you on WhatsApp. Or else they're not going to get the message, right?
That's true. Yeah, I think I should actually, I didn't think about that. Like, I think I should like direct all my messages on one platform.
Yeah.
Because that's just like focus and it's better. I haven't done that actually. I do get like Instagram DMs and stuff, and I don't reply. Exactly. Yeah, I should probably do that. But also like I think I have a hard, like I think in terms of like the news and stuff and like books, I do it really well. But I feel like in terms of social media, I still feel like I have that fear of missing out. Yeah. So what I've come to realize, I made this rule where I'm only gonna reply once every hour to people I actually care about, right? So people who like matter and stuff, and who I want to like, even if they're not close to me, like if I feel like we have like something important going, like I feel like I could be friends with them or something, then I'll probably like reply to them every 1 hour. But for like group chats or like people who I know that nothing is ever gonna happen, I reply like once a day at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I'll only go through them, you know? Because that way I feel like I'm still not throwing myself in the deep end to some degree, but I'm also like making rules, you know? Setting standards that I should follow.
So, for instance, if you go on Snapchat and Facebook and Instagram, you have to actually get to your messages, you're going to have to go through all of this information, all of these distractions. Yeah. So if you have all your messages in one place and your social media in the other place, then it's easier to separate and not get distracted, I think.
Yeah, I think I should do that more often. I feel like if people message me on Instagram and stuff, I'd probably be like, you know, message me on WhatsApp, and I think I'm only going to reply there. I think that's fair. I think, that's a good idea. Also, like, so for Instagram stories and stuff, right, what I essentially do is I follow the same advice. From now on, I'm only going to start seeing the stories of people who are close to me in some degree, you know? I've made a rule. I'm only gonna like go through them once in a day.
Yeah.
Okay, at the end of the day, I'll go through them all really quick,
Mm.
and I'm gonna not see the stories of people who I feel like whose stories like I know there's nothing gonna be there. Like they
Yeah.
don't add any value, they kind of
Yeah.
distractions, and I don't care about those people at all, right? But if it's someone who I care about even slightly, or like I know nearby, or I might need them in the future or something, then I just like I'll go through their stories. But I feel like even by doing that, you can get rid of like so many people, like it's just
Yeah.
you know.
And I think there's the problem with people our age as well. We're university students. There's so much social activity happening around us. It's very easy to get that FOMO. You feel like you're gonna miss something with just a couple of stories. If there's a party or a social event or anything.
Yeah.
But really, at the end of the day, like you said, if you do that 1 week cleanse where you just shut it all out, at the end of the week you realize nothing's happened. Like nothing's changed. You haven't missed anything.
Exactly, and like. If I don't know, I feel like again like there's the whole like idea of like it's also quite toxic like seeing other people. So I think going on a low information diet helps you like curate this bubble like where you are the only one who's there along with the people you actually care about, and that makes you a lot more like grateful. And then you stop feeling shit about how much fun other people are having because you're not looking at how much fun they're having.
Yeah.
So what I do is like. I mean, I've gotten over it. Initially, what I used to do was like just like not look at their stories and look at the stories of only the people I care about.
Yeah.
But I feel like now that I've come to terms with the idea of like becoming secure with myself and like stop caring about what other people are doing, But so then I can like actually start looking at other people's story and it won't affect me in any way. I just look at them for the sake of looking at them.
I get it. So I mean, social media, limit it.
Yeah.
Try and look at it once or twice if you can, but not too much. And then news, you leave that completely, do you?
I leave it out completely.
Okay.
And like just follow like social media. Some like for example Bloomberg News, right? Or like some political experts who I feel like give out a good like piece of information, or even like meme pages, political memes.
Yeah.
I feel like they have like a lot of like good information, especially information that you kind of agree with in some way, right?
Okay.
Because I feel like in the newspaper and stuff, it's like they try to be unbiased by providing like both aisles and stuff, right? But that's just a waste of time. Like literally, like you're not gonna be convinced by reading that. They just want to increase their viewership by doing that. So what you should do is, I feel like just follow whoever you kind of agree with, and then get like that small condensed piece of information from them. So that's what I do.
I think with me, like especially with the news, I think that's my crux more so than the social media. Is I don't mind. Well, I mind less if I miss someone's Instagram story or what they're posting about, but I mind more if I'm missing the news because I kind of feel like I don't know, the world is happening around you and you're missing out on it.
Yeah, honestly, like. I'm telling you, just like ignore it like for 1 week, and I'll tell you like it won't make that much of a difference. And for me, initially, I struggled with that idea a lot, because like I have like political ambitions in some way. I want to like improve the world and stuff, and I figured like if I'm not even reading the news, then how am I gonna do it? But in my head, what I realized is like, if there's anything important that I need to know, I'll get to know it from like the people around me anyways, and instead of reading that news, I was never acting on it, right? But now I'm not reading that news, but then I have a lot of free time on my hands that I can actively work on improving myself, So I feel like with the low information diet, I can focus on the things that matter, and rather than reading about it, I can actually act on those things and improve myself improve myself in order to achieve those goals rather than having to read about them, because we already know what we want to achieve in some degree, right? So if you want to improve the world, you want to change the world and stuff, you don't have to know whatever is happening in the world. Right? You can just, what's wrong in some ways, or at least I do in my opinion. And then I can work actively to improve myself in that avenue. And I don't think that news helps me in any way.
Yeah.
Okay?
I get it.
But that doesn't mean that you should completely shut yourself out from the world and be completely ignorant, Like, I still get my information in, but I get it like in a very condensed format and in like a very concise manner. I don't go through like 2 hours of like reading the newspaper to get through the information. I feel like Instagram and like social media and like people kind of filter out all the unnecessary information and give it to me themselves, if that makes sense. Yeah. I think the idea, like even when you always feel like when you're reading instructions or you feel like you're watching a video or like in a book, for example, as well, someone is saying something important that you feel like you might need it in the future, right? So you learn the thing, right? And then, but you are not going to use it like instantly right now, in the immediate future, but you're going to need it somewhere along like 3 or 4 months from now, right? That is like a very gray area where a lot of people like make mistake in like the low information diet, because I feel like in that instance it might seem like taking that information in is actually important, but in reality that is not important information. Like when I say the low information diet, that information has to be cut out completely. Because what Tim Ferriss says is practice the art of just in time information rather than just in case information, right? So what that means is essentially that rather than learning things that you might need in the future, right, ask yourself, am I going to need it now, right? If the answer is no, don't bother, okay? Because if you're ever going to need it in the future, then you can go through this information again in the future.
But what's the process with that then? So would you log a piece of information for the future you to come back to read over and go, oh, page 296?
That's what I do. So when I was going through Tim Ferriss's book, for example, what I did was, if I came across some things about like business and stuff, where he talks about like drop shipping and things, I know I'm not going to use it now, but I might need it in the future. So what I write is, read chapter this and this, right? He talks about drop shipping and stuff, alright? And then I just skip the chapter. That makes sense.
Oh, so the whole chapter I
just skip it.
Okay.
Right? Because that way, I don't need that information now, So I saved so much time, but I know that information exists, so I can come back to it when I need it.
I get it.
So that is also practicing low information diet. It might not seem obvious, but that's one way of doing it. And I feel like a lot of people miss out on that.
Okay.
Also, another thing I think a lot of people make mistakes on is learn the art of not finishing. Okay?
Yeah.
So I feel like when we go for movies and stuff, or we go through articles, we are halfway through the article when we realize that this is not important. This is not important for me right now. I don't need it, I'm not going to need it in my immediate future. But we feel like we're halfway through it, so we might as well complete it. But that's actually a very toxic mentality to have, because you're wasting your time, You've already wasted 5 minutes. Doesn't mean that you have to waste another 5 minutes, right? Completing the article. So what I do is, if like, don't stick around till the end, right? If you don't enjoy the movie, just go, like, leave it, If you feel like it's not informative enough, leave it. If the audiobook you're listening to is not related to your goals and ambitions in any way, or even if it is related, it isn't, you're not going to need that information right now, leave,
I feel like I do that maybe to a different extent, but I feel like I do that quite a lot, I think, especially with a book. When you start reading a book, you don't always know how good that book's going to be, and if you get maybe 2 chapters in and you realize this book's actually garbage, there's no point reading another 18 chapters, right?
Yeah.
Because that's going to be 10 hours of reading, maybe 20 hours of reading.
Exactly.
You're never going to get that back. You could spend that time reading a better book.
Exactly.
Or doing something else.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, like, practicing the art of not finishing. Yeah. And I think to practice that, I think what people can do is, like, know that if you're going to start reading this book, okay, which you know is not important for you, like suppose it's like a book on neuroscience, okay? I don't need that information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start reading the first 3 pages, right? And then I'll stop reading halfway through the page. Because that gives me kind of like practice.
Through the 3rd page?
Yeah. So that's what I do.
Just
give you an example. Because that gives me like practice. Because I feel like usually people have the urge to complete that 1 page, right?
I see.
But what I'm going to do is I'm not going to complete that 1 page. And I feel like that gives me like practice. Everything is a muscle, right? So the more you practice, the better you get at it. So in terms of like low information diet, the more you practice being on the low information diet, the better you get at it.
This would be for someone who like is trying to discipline their mind and...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to think of it as discipline reps. Like,
Okay.
the more you practice discipline in terms of your actions in any avenue of your life, it translates to other avenues of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
even in terms of like that book thing, it kind of helps. You know.
Okay. So then, let's say we have a university student,
Okay.
and they're just trying to start out with a low information diet. They're not trying to do anything too drastic.
Yeah.
Let's say maybe they've done this 1 week cleanse, and
Yeah.
they've kind of seen, all right, well, I can take some of these things out of my life. Where should we get them to start? As in, should we try and say cut out all social media completely, or like how would they pick? How would they go about?
I think it depends on your goals and ambitions, right?
Yeah.
If you feel like you want to be a journalist, then by all means, I think you shouldn't cut out news, you know? But for me, I don't want to be a journalist, right? So what I do is I completely cut that out. But
Yeah.
for me, I want to improve on my social life. So I don't cut out social media completely because I know that I still need to be on there. I still need to reply to some people in order to build those social connections,
Right.
right? But I feel like once I reach the point where I feel contempt, I don't need to meet any new people, then I can like completely cut it out, and then I know that I'm not missing out on anything. But right now I feel like there are actual implications that I might have if I stop replying to people on social media or stop like watching what they do, you know?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so like to what extent would you like follow the low information diet? Because I feel like that's where we disagree. Yeah.
So I think for me, the main thing is time saving.
Yeah.
Right? But don't get me wrong, I love learning and I love taking in information.
Yeah.
But like you said, I'm trying to limit that. So I won't do the social media, except for, I do have a guilty pleasure for TikTok. I think that's my weak point. I think that's something I can procrastinate a lot on, but I'm trying to limit that.
Okay.
I'm trying to reduce the news, but then that's probably where I leave it. That's the extent where I go, okay, that's my low information. But then when it comes to things like books and things like that, that's where I have no limit. Because for me, and especially with YouTube videos as well,
Yeah.
I think there's so much good information out there, and there's so much information that will provoke a thought or an idea within you that you kind of need them things. And I think that's where we probably disagree. That book in neuroscience,
Yeah.
maybe that doesn't apply directly to you, but in some ways you might be able to use that information. I mean, you have lots of economic models which are modeled on physics or on biology or on other things. And in the same way, you might be able to apply some concepts from one completely different field to a field that relates to you.
Yeah, but hear me out on this. For those books, I would classify them more as like pleasure reading rather than information reading, right? Because I wouldn't read any book like that for its inherent information value or like its productive value to me, right?
Okay.
But that doesn't mean I don't read any books, right? I still read books that would be like a fantasy book, like Harry Potter, for example.
Okay.
It's not going to give me any information, right? But it's going to like make me feel happy. Then I read it, right? And it also has like benefits of like improving your vocabulary or like probably like giving you ideas and stuff, making you more creative.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't like misclassify them as being books that only provide value. I feel like when I think about books that provide value, then I only want value from the things that I want value from.
Yeah.
Right? So I disagree in reading books at all, in general, right? Unless it's for pleasure reading.
Okay.
So I feel like because the information in books is like so spaced out, right? That you're gonna have to go through the whole book to find the key pieces of wisdom and things that actually matter, you know?
Yeah.
But when you talk to a person or you watch a YouTube video, right? The information is a lot more condensed, right? And it's much easier to search for it, right? For example, if I'm having trouble with something, I'll search for it on YouTube. I'll get one video about it, right?
Yeah.
Take, for example, if I want to learn how to fix my sink, right?
Yeah.
I could technically go through a book about plumbing, right?
Yeah.
And in one chapter I'll find out how to fix sinks, right?
Yeah.
But it took me like 4 hours to go through that whole book, okay? But if I were to just go on a YouTube video or ask a friend how to fix a sink, I could get that same information in a condensed and concise manner and just like learn that much and that's it, you know? So I feel like in productive books and stuff, like books that provide value. I only look for books where I feel like the whole book has value in it. Or at least most of the book has value in it, right? Only then I'll read it, and that too I won't read it. I'll actually listen to it like in an audiobook format.
Yeah.
But if I feel like there's just like certain parts of the book that might be helpful for me, then I just won't read the book. I just go on the internet and learn it from someone else.
But I feel like it depends on the problem, right? Because let's say fixing your sink, you don't need a lengthy 1,000-page book to learn that. You can just watch a YouTube video. But let's say it's something more in depth. Let's say you need to learn economic theory. Maybe in that case, reading the book will take precedent over the YouTube video. And maybe that YouTube video would take, say, 5 hours or several videos in order for you to get up to speed as you would with that book. But maybe that book was written by a very high-class, world-renowned professor, and he'd been refining it for 10 years, and it's like his life's work in that one book.
Yeah.
Compared to maybe a YouTube video where they're more sporadic. Someone writes a book, well, depending on the person, they write it for the material that they're trying to publish.
Mm-hmm.
But when people write YouTube videos, I think sometimes they can get carried away, and if you have to create a video weekly, for instance, that information is not going to be as dense as it would in the book.
If you're an economist, probably, you're probably going to need that book. But if economics is not your goal at all, then I feel like you don't need to go through that book. For example, you gave me an example of like a podcast you're listening to about neuroscience.
Yeah.
And I would never listen to that podcast because my goals and ambitions are not at all related to neuroscience, right?
Yeah.
You can listen to that podcast probably for pleasure reading, for listening just because you want to have fun. But I don't think the goal should be to get any value out of it. I feel like you're not going to miss out if you don't read that podcast, listen to that podcast,
But I feel like the thing is that so many things are interlinked now, so many topics. And so maybe a podcast on neuroscience, on the surface, it doesn't seem like it can give you any value. But actually, because it's talking about how the brain works and how you function, and actually understanding how your brain works is going to make you more productive.
But I think that's a very toxic mentality to have in general. I feel like it's like hoping in the hopes like this thing might be useful to me in some ways or another. I disagree with that. Whether I decide if it's useful or it's not useful. There's no in between for me. So if I want to learn about my brain and stuff, how my brain works, right? I'll read that podcast, but I don't need to know how my brain works in the hopes of that it might be useful to me professionally or somewhere I might utilize it. I don't need to know that information. I feel like the idea that we all think that, I might need that information, it's again the same thing, just in case information or just in time information, right? You are saying that just in case I might find something useful in the book, I'm going to read that book. But what I'm saying is, if I don't know that there's anything useful in there probably is, but there might not be as well, But if I ever need to know about my brain, then I can go through the book. But I don't need to know now, because it's not immediate information, then I won't go through the book at all.
Yeah, but I think the problem is, how do you know what you need to know? Because if you don't know it, it's hard to know that you need to know it, if that makes sense. So it's not until you discover that information or you get taught that lesson that you go, actually, I really needed to know that. That's actually very useful.
But you can say that about everything. Doesn't mean that you're going to go through every book in the world.
No, of
right?
course
Because something, you probably might not know you wanted to read that book, but there was something important that you might have learned.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm ready to take that chance of not knowing that thing. Because I feel like the things that I do know, that I need to know, are driving me so far, and I feel like that's all I need to know right now.
Yeah.
I don't need to, maybe something, I might come across something in that book of yours that might improve my life in some way,
Yeah.
But my life is perfectly fine without it as well,
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything, so I don't need to know that book. And I feel like I've learned to cultivate that idea of selective ignorance and focusing on the things that only truly matter for me, That way I'm able to single out anything that's not at all important for me, Because it's not saying that I'm not saying that there's no value in reading that book. There probably is. But there's more value in reading a book that is condensed and only that I know there's going to be value in it.
Yeah.
Rather than having the hopes of there being value in that book.
Yeah.
Yeah?
It's an interesting perspective. I think for me, I do agree with you. I think I do try and get value and pleasure out of the book, though. I think that's my point, is that I'm not... For instance, if I was reading productivity books 24/7, like I've read a lot recently, and it kind of... I'm losing my momentum a bit now, is what I think. So then, to break that up, I'm now reading a book on economics, and, you know, instead of listening to a productivity podcast, I'm now listening to one about artificial intelligence and neuroscience.
Yeah.
Just to kind of break up some of that. And so I am getting pleasure out of it because it's something new.
Yeah.
But I'm also... I feel like there's a productive aspect already to it. Yeah. And I think sometimes you do need to have a general blanket view of a wide range of topics to get a more specific close-up view of the topic that you want to learn about. So even though you're not learning about economics affects everything, biology affects everything, physics affects everything. So maybe by learning a general overview of that, and you're getting a bit of pleasure, but it's a bit of pleasure and a bit of value out of that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that makes sense. That probably there is some productive value to it, and we shouldn't just think of it as being only pleasure reading. It has a place in the productive aspect of your life as well, but I feel like that shouldn't be the focus, you know? Like, it's not, like, I don't think, or maybe if I read more books and stuff, I'll probably realize that maybe, like, I need that break in between by listening to something else, you know?
Yeah.
To be more productive. But right now, I've never come across that, like you know, losing of momentum. So I feel like those books still have only pleasure value to me.
Yeah.
You don't need to know that information, you know?
I think the important thing to remember is there's no right or wrong approach. It's whatever works best for the person. Like my approach, for instance, is not going to be for everyone. And some people aren't going to be interested in topics like economics or neuroscience. So to them, there's no point reading that book because it doesn't provide that much value to them, but it also provides no pleasure.
Yeah.
And then same with your view. You know, some people might be like me, where maybe they get bored of reading a book just for value, but at the same time they don't think that they have enough time for a book just for pleasure. So I think it depends on the person, right?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I feel like right now I'm really focused on like what I want to achieve, you know? So in that sense, I feel like I'm very selective about what information I receive. And I think that focus and that goal and like my ambitions are so clear that I feel like I have literally no use for those economics books, you know? So I think there is a difference about what you want to achieve in life and your goals and ambitions and stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay then. I think that's it for today, right?
I think so.
Alright guys, so thank you so much for joining us and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
See you next week.
I think that's fine.